It's very simple, man. You just go in there like regular, you just shop around like regular, and then we're gonna come in to do the hostage thing.
Like regular, Carl?
Yeah, no, guys, don't kill me.
But if you stay here, I'll kill you.
Listen, man, this is about to be a robbery.
What?
That went well, huh?
Dude, experts, man, that's what we are.
After I take these two bozos down, every paper in the Tri-County area is gonna be knocking on that door. Come in.
He want a word with you.
You got a price on your head higher than a blue ribbon piggy. And I'm gonna be the one that brings you into slaughter.
Pardon me for saying so, but that's no way to make a deal.
Authorities say they're closing in on the notorious crime duo known as the Star Spangled Bandit and the Apache Warrior. The fate of their hostage remains unknown.
We could be infamous banditos, man. Butch and Sundance style.
Oh, hell. You're gonna have to bust these poor boys.
And where's your bags? I was told we were taking a trip. We love trips.
Anything else?
Yeah, call the cops. I'm hostage.
No.
That's got it.
All right, pull up.
I like they do it.
Hello, everyone. This is David and Najir from WatcherPass.com, your website for movie news, reviews, interviews, deals, and recommendations. Today, we are joined by Mr. Ben Matheny, the writer and star of the new indie road trip movie, Easy Does It. Ben, how are you doing?
Doing great. How's it going with you guys?
Can't complain. Yeah, happy to see a new face. So.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, we're talking to people right now. How wild is this?
Real people. So I guess this is kind of our standard question in this new world that we're in. But your movie came out a couple weeks ago during the quarantine. It's available on digital on pretty much every digital platform. So if you're interested in watching it, it's easy to get. You can just head to whatever streaming service you want and pick it up. But I guess what was it like to release a movie during quarantine? Was it always envisioned as a digital movie, or did you have to pivot for this time?
Yeah, it was interesting, man. We had signed for a theatrical release, and so it was a little bit of a pivot. It was interesting, though, because there are actually a lot of independent theaters and even independent chains that are open, that are desperate to bring people in. And these chains are doing, and these independent theaters are going above and beyond to really make it a safe experience. I had a lot of friends who hadn't been to a cinema since this all began that were very sort of reticent and unsure. And then they came out to, one of our, because we ended up playing about 25 or 26 theaters nationwide. And they came out to one of them and walked out of it saying like, okay, like I can do that again. Like I'm going to go back to the cinema. And, obviously everybody has their own comfort level, and I would never, encourage anybody to, this is something that we all have to take seriously. And, I'm not diminishing, but I will say, independent cinema owners nationwide are taking tremendous steps to ensure their safety. And they need our help right now, man. I was involved in booking the film in its theaters since it was sort of a different. Our distributor, Gravitas, who are terrific, have kind of very specific markets that they normally will book for a film that they take on to do theatrically. And because of the COVID landscape, a lot of those markets, New York, LA, et cetera, weren't options. There were no theaters open. And so I kind of got involved to help find theaters. And so I found myself speaking to all these theatrical bookers and theater owners. And it's a tough time, man. It's a tough time for theater owners. It's obviously a tough time for everybody, but we might be in a situation where, something like 2/5 of all independent cinemas that we know and love will not make it through this. So I guess that's my one soapbox for this whole thing. And I just got it out of the way right at the beginning. But if you are somebody who could feel comfortable going into a cinema environment, this is really a time they could use your help.
This is your interview. If you want to preach on. That's fine with us.
All right, cool. No, and so other than that, pivoting to we were always going to be. It became clear quickly as COVID became a thing that we were going to be day and date and be doing our VOD digital release the same day as theater if there was to be any theatrical that we were going to have to do a day and date, and that's fine. You know, I mean, I like the theatrical window just because I go to the movies even now in COVID. I go to the movies like once or twice a week. That's just my church, it's my thing. You know, so I do think I personally kind of like the whole, you know, 3-month window between theaters and digital, but I think there's a strong case to be made that we're past that as a country as well. So, or as you know, as an audience base as well. So, I don't know. So yeah, I mean, in terms of pivoting, man, you know, there are people with a lot worse problems than us in our little indie movies. So, you know, we don't get too down about it. I mean, and maybe there might even be some silver linings for independent filmmakers like us that are releasing stuff right now. And that I think more folks are going to VOD titles. So, you know, yeah, sure. But it was a little wild. There was some pivoting, but you know, well, yeah, there's much bigger stuff. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, and your statement on indie movies is interesting. I've had a lot of questions from mostly family, actually, just asking, like, you know, is there going to be some sort of lull when everything reopens as people try to fill the theaters with content? And I think your point about indie movies might be a good one. They could be used as a way to bridge the gap. They can have different distribution models as people become more comfortable with going back to theaters, or, you know, maybe want to try a smaller theater before they go to a large release. So it could be kind of a nice window for indie movies to rise up.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The other thing for us to keep in mind is that like everything since like February has pretty much gotten pushed. So like whenever theaters open up, I think now is the lull. I think when theaters do eventually open up, we're going to have this backlogged catalog of, you know, Tenet and Mulan and Unhinged and every other, you know, Barb and Margot to Rio del Vista, all these great movies that, you know, Free Guy, and I don't know, the list goes on and on. I was very acutely aware of the things that were coming out in theaters because we were going to be coming up against them all. And I was like, oh, we're so screwed. You know, so like I know everything that was going to come out that has not come out, and dude, it's a stacked catalog. Like 2020 was looking like a good year for films, so there will be stuff.
Yeah.
And I got one more question. You mentioned that you had some theatrical release. You know, I'm sure everyone's read the story about that one independent film that rented out their own theater and basically hit IMDb #1 for a day. I mean, did the COVID times help Easy Does It kind of rise up in the you know, rankings
Box
for
office.
the release? Or
That's a great question. Actually, this is going to sound crazy, but I have not checked our box office.
Oh, no, I'm gonna make
I've
you
been
look.
I'm kind of curious now. Like, I've been very busy. We've been, you know, again, we've got a, you know, terrific distributor and a terrific publicity agency, Falco Inc., who both of whom have been lovely to work with. And, you know, we're working with a small budget. We got a lot of lucky breaks, and certainly both of those guys count as lucky breaks because they're, you know, especially Falco. It's great publicists for any indie filmmakers out there who will work with you at a lower budget. That's what you need to do. But what I'm trying to say is, like, though those guys are great, I've still been doing just like, you know, I think, and this is probably what any independent filmmaker should do, no matter how great of a distributor or a publicist or whatever you have working for you, man, do everything you can yourself, like grassroots, the ever loving anything out of that movie of yours, because, you know, they take years to make, dude. It takes a piece of your soul. I mean, you're never the same. You know what I mean? You're messed up after you make a movie. It's hard on you. And, you know, if you years later looking back realize that you gave up in the home stretch and didn't do everything you could to push that thing, you're going to regret it. So the answer is I have not yet had a moment to check the box office. But they're also, the box office reporting is really different these days because so few films are open and so many films are doing like, you know, repertory titles. If I had to guess, I would say our box office was probably pretty dismal because films like, yeah, all right, I'm not seeing this immediately.
Oh no, real-time reactions.
Yeah, whatever. That's my real-time reaction to anything these days. I mean, I'll say this, like Empire Strikes Back was like #1 in the box office a couple of weeks ago. You know what I mean? So like audiences, I think this is a time when it makes sense that audiences want the comfort food of a repertory title, of something they know and love. And so you are seeing like IFC do some really good numbers. Obviously like The Wretched is up to 1.7 million, as I see it in front of me right now, because they got in on it really early. They were savvy and they went into drive-ins. We've been having a really hard time, and I think drive-ins are really where you make your money. I mean, we're in 26 theaters nationwide, but I think in a lot of them, dude, people just aren't going out to anything that's playing. I think the only theaters that are really doing good numbers are drive-ins, and we had a tough time getting into drive-ins, partially because they're having such good luck with repertory titles, which they pay like nothing for. It's just like almost pure profit. And then partially because there's like, you know, there's some dudes smoking doobies in our movies, and drive-ins are very family oriented. So they weren't crazy about the marijuana concept, which is minimal. Well, yeah, you know, I don't know,
it's not a lot. I mean, this movie feels like the perfect drive-in movie. It's a cross-country road trip movie.
Thank you. I'm going to send that soundbite of you saying that to these drive-ins that wouldn't play my movie. Thanks for saying that.
Sounds good.
So, considering the timeline of this movie, now there's a short that this film had back in 2013. Can you kind of take us through how this project came about then, as to being a short, as to being a feature-length film here released in 2020?
Dude, nice research. Yes. So my whole team for this movie, for Easy Does It, went to the University of New Orleans, in New Orleans, the film program there. And, you know, we were all just like idiot undergrad kids together making terrible short films and web series and whatever on the weekends. And we graduated I graduated in 2011, you know, so people were kind of in the years after that, 2011, 2012, 2013, people were graduating into basically working in the industry, because at the time New Orleans had just gotten this tax credit thing going where all of a sudden a ton of, you know, Hollywood stuff was shooting in New Orleans. And it was great, dude, because I always assumed as soon as I got out of school I'd have to move to New York or LA. And I love New York and LA, and I don't have anything against, you know, living there or working there, but New Orleans, man, is such a beautiful city and just such authentic people, and it's so tiny, and it's a tough place to leave. And so much to my surprise, when all of us graduated film school, we were able to kind of go right to work, being, you know, not doing great work. We were, you know, PAs and assistants to this and assistants to that, but we were able to kind of get to work. And but we really missed, back in the day, you know, every weekend we were making somebody's short film or somebody's web series or somebody's this or somebody's that. And we really missed that. So Will Addison, the director of the film and the guy I co-wrote the movie with, we were roommates at the time. We were living together, me and him and another buddy, Matthew Martinez, who plays Scotty in the movie, the guy that, the Apache Warrior, kind of my partner in crime in the movie. And Will is very much like Colin, like the hostage. He's just like a very meek, very kind of like, you know, private, not nerdy at all, but just kind of very meek, sort of like, you know, kind of squeaky clean dude. And then me and Matthew are not so much unlike the characters we play in the movie, just a little more, you know, these like Southern boys, or they just kind of, we have a good time, you know, the joints and all that. That's based on real life. And so, you know, Will was very, I think he felt sort of taken hostage by us when he moved in with us, because he was, you know, just like, we were a lot to deal with. And so anyways, I think just based on his real experience of feeling that we were this way, wrote a short film that, again, we just missed making shorts. There was no logic of, oh, someday this will be a feature. It was just, we missed making shorts. Let's do something really easy. He wanted to experiment with some techniques. So he made the short. You know, we put it in a couple of film festivals. People liked it, whatever. But mainly, we just had a good time doing it. We were just like, oh, it was really fun. That was good. We should, you know, too bad that's over. And then just one day he comes to me and says, hey, let's flesh it out into a feature. And we had written, you know, a feature before together, just kind of trying it out, you know, seeing if we could get it made, get it sold, which of course we didn't. And so by the time we got Easy Does It written, we had, you know, either together written or separately written or as a group written 3 different features that we had tried to get funded, and of course just failed miserably, which is generally what happens when you're trying to make your first feature. You generally are just kind of spending a lot of time failing.
It's a good lesson to know, right, for everyone watching. That,
oh yeah, dude, be prepared to fail. Yeah, just love it. You know, it's almost just like, dude, think about it like you have to fail a certain number of times before you succeed. So every failure is just like, yeah, sweet, one more failure down. Maybe I've failed enough now. It's just like inevitable, you know? And So yeah, man. I mean, so we started writing the feature in 2014, and putting together a business plan and trying to get investors and all that. And it really ended up being a mercy for us that it took us until 2017 to get it funded. So it took us kind of 3 years of going out to investors, getting really excited because we thought we had the person, and then it falling through, and just kind of it not happening, and just trying to look under every rock and beat every bush. And that actually ended up being a really good thing for us because we never stopped rewriting. So by the time we had the shooting draft of the script, it was draft like probably 25. At some point we just stopped numbering them, and just and that was a good thing because, we're young guys, and when you're young, you're writing, it's good, but it can be better, and I mean, even now watching the movie, we're like, oh, Jesus, how did we let that happen? That's so stupid. Like, it's just like, I feel like that's inevitable, but it was really a tender mercy. If we had made draft 1, 2, or 3 of the script, I mean, it would have been a disaster. So yeah, man, we just kind of kept plugging. We had a really great team, which I think, for folks that want to do an indie film, it's the team is paramount. That's everything. I mean, having it because if it's your first indie, you're probably not going to really be paying people for their time. I mean, we all made some money, but you do the math based on how many hours of work you did. I mean, dude, you're making 10 cents an hour. I mean, it's nothing. So if you don't have a team, you got nothing. I mean, you have to have people that believe in each other, and you have to find people that are much better than you at whatever they do best, and find people who are just really creative and that you like hanging around, that you're buddies because you're going to be spending a lot of time with these guys. And so we just all hustled for a few years, kept rewriting. Finally, like late 2016, we're like, all right, we got to figure something out. I guess let's do a Kickstarter, and we'll do it for $25,000. And while the Kickstarter's going, we'll keep trying to raise money. And after we get the money, we'll try for a month or two to keep raising money. And then if the money comes in from Kickstarter and we still haven't raised any more money, then screw it. We'll just make it for $25,000, which would have been interesting. I don't know how well that would have worked. But thankfully, honestly, just getting that $25K, for whatever reason, that was something that really sort of, and we also met our executive producer, Alexa Georges, kind of at that time. And it was just sort of the perfect kismet of, we met the perfect EP at that time. And then also she was really impressed that we'd finished the Kickstarter, that we'd gotten $25K. She just was like, well, hey, if I put some money in and I have some other people put some money in, at least these guys are bringing something to the table. So, that wasn't ultimately a huge part of our budget. It's not like 25K was half or a quarter of our budget. But it was, a decent slice. On a pie, it would be a slice that you would be able to see. It would show up on a pie graph. And more than anything, I think it just kind of convinced her we had skin in the game, and that we were willing to see something through. Because a Kickstarter is a lot of work if you're doing it for a decent amount of money like that, And so, yeah, I mean, that's sort of how funding happened. I think for anybody who's trying to make their first feature, I can't overemphasize the importance of finding a really good executive producer whose primary job is to help you get your financing in order. Because, if you're a young person like we all are, it may be hard for people with a lot of wealth to feel like they can trust giving you $50,000, right? But if you have this person who is, and when you're looking for an executive producer, they don't have to be from film. Our executive producer, Alexa, came from the world of business. She was a businesswoman, and she was a supporter of the arts. We found her because she was somebody who had supported the Film Society in our city in New Orleans. So when you're looking for your executive producer, think outside the box. It doesn't have to be somebody who's produced a movie before. Find somebody who's a patron of the arts. So, I mean, first step, the film societies that you have in your area, look at who's on the board. The people that are on the board, the higher their names are listed, the more money that they contributed. And then therefore, the more they care about film. And, generally people who are wealthy know other wealthy people. That's just how it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, be looking at those lists. Look at, your art museum. They'll have it like on they'll have it on their little book they give you. Flip to the back. They'll have the board of supporters.
Yeah.
Look at those names and see like who are the names that keep coming up again and again. These are people that, they're wealthy, but more importantly, are using their wealth and influence to support the arts.
Yeah.
And so we had, this short list of names that kind of kept coming up, and Alexa was on there. And then, we looked into her and realized that she was a very successful businesswoman. And we're like, well, a successful businesswoman, because that's something we didn't have at the time. We had no business savvy. We'd gone to film school. But a film is basically equal parts art and business, and like it or not, that's what it is. And so she ended up really being the perfect person. And I think once you have somebody who believes in the project and can kind of champion you, then, also they're going to know other folks who have money. They're going to be the ones who are going to have more access and better access to these other investor types. And their word is going to mean a lot more than your word does. So that was sort of the financing thing. Other than that, we did all the normal things. We put together a business plan. We shot a concept teaser. That ended up being a really important thing. Me and Will had a company, EFI, Elysian Fields Independent, that was kind of more of an IP company, but we partnered with another production company in town, Worklight Pictures, who were, they did a lot of music videos and commercials, and so they really had a great handle on physical production. And so we kind of joined forces, and they had a bunch of, friends in their circle. We had a bunch of friends who were in our production company, and that was sort of the marriage that made the movie happen. And so when we brought them on, we shot a concept trailer for like, $1,000, $2,000 that Will just, took out his savings and did that. And it was definitely something, especially if you're dealing with investors that haven't invested in a movie before, like the script isn't going to mean anything to them. And in fact, I've heard people say, don't show investors a script unless they have read a bunch of scripts, because it's not always very sexy. They read it and it's, even if it's a well-written script, if they're not used to reading scripts, it can be kind of like, it's hard for them to see it because that's just not what they do for a living.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
If you can make a concept teaser, then at least they can kind of see, and you're sort of demonstrating like, hey, we made this for a couple $1,000s. It looks pretty good, right? Well, and we had the same cinematographer, same camera, all of that. So it was easy for us to be like, look, same thing, same actors, same DP, same director. This looks decent for $2,000. So just give us more than that, and we'll, So yes, those are basically all the funding stuff I could go through, and that brings us up to like 2017, and then we made the thing. Then it gets easy.
I can see the future of this now. Free knowledge by Ben.
Dude, I'm down to lay out knowledge, man. I got gray hairs learning all this stuff, so anything I can,
Now,
hey, in this world, when everyone's going to be remote, you're going to be a professor at New Orleans University, so that'll be perfect.
Yeah, why not?
Now, kind of going back, and I can see some of your answers probably being redundant here, but so with this film, Easy Does It, you wore a triple hat, writer, producer, and star. And the last time you've done that was back in 2009 with 40 Days of Femin. Can you kind of
do your research, dude? That's amazing. Wow.
Can you talk about the growth from 2009 to 2020? And how difficult is to put together a film having to wear all three of those hats?
Yeah, don't recommend it. Don't do it. It's a bad idea. So 40 Days of Famine it's basically like I was in college, I was in film school, and it never really got finished. Like there's a cut of it you can watch, but it was never released. You know what I mean? It was really just like a very intensive like second film school of just like, oh my god, I got to make this thing, and it's like this no budget feature that has nobody's there's probably like a dozen people on earth that have seen that movie, but I definitely learned doing that one. So in that one I was directing and acting in it, and I definitely learned doing that one. Like personally, I just can't direct and act at the same time. I'm just not talented enough. There are people who make amazing movies doing both, and maybe in decades from now I'll be that good, but I know for a fact I can't do it. Directing is such a demanding job, and honestly I think my lucky stars I wasn't, because I had always been like, oh yeah, the first EFI movie, like I'll get to direct it because I'm the bossiest, and I'm so thankful that Will was the one to direct the first one, because directing a feature is such a marathon, it's such a gauntlet, And there's so many thousands of just like, there's that Hamlet quote where he's like, the thousand whips that flesh is heir to. It's just like when you just sign up to direct a feature film for not enough money, just a low budget, man, you are setting yourself up for 1,000 disappointments. It's going to be rough. Like, it's going to break your heart. Like, I mean, Will probably doesn't appreciate me telling people this, but he's not here, so whatever. but like right after, you know, we made the movie, you know, like this is like not even that long ago. This is like a year ago. I'd be like, yeah, man, so what's next? And he would just look me dead in the eye, dead serious, and be like, next is I never make another movie again. And he wasn't kidding. He was serious, you know. I was like, oh my God, oh no. You know, and he's recovered now. He will in fact make more movies, and he's, you know, and he's a dude to watch. I mean, you know, whether you like it, he does it or not, I'm glad to hear you guys liked it. I mean, he's a very talented dude, and if he had just had a little more resources, I mean, I think this film could have been a big, you know, I think it could have gone all the way in terms of Sundance or whatever. He's a very talented dude. But yeah, I mean, I'll say this, man. I mean, in terms of wearing more than one hat, to answer your question, it's really tempting when you're early in your career to want to do it because you're ambitious, and sometimes it's super necessary. Like, I didn't really want to be a producer. This is now my second feature I produced, and I kind of like producing. It's kind of fun. I'll probably do some of it going forward. Some. You know, I wanted to be a writer-director, but this wasn't going to be mine to direct. I'm glad I didn't direct it. I'm glad it was him. And somebody had to produce it, you know, and I had some awesome producers on my team. We had Lizzie Guitro was just my co-pilot the whole way. And I mean, just total, like, no-nonsense, capable, young, and she's younger than me. She was like 26 or something, you know, like young woman who's just managed to steer this feature kind of single-handedly. So, I mean, look, you might get drawn into producing the thing because you have no choice. I would definitely encourage you, if you're an actor and you want to take a lead role, like if it's a supporting role, okay, whatever. But I would say if you're starting out, if it's your first feature and you are an actor, if what you want to be most as an actor, probably find somebody else to direct it. You'll give a better performance. Acting is tough too. I mean, it's a lot easier than some things, I think, but it's still not easy. And I think, you know, if you're trying to do too many other things, your performance is going to suffer. And nobody cares about your excuses. It doesn't matter. Oh, we didn't have enough money, or on this day this happened, or oh, I was directing to. Nobody cares. Like, you're not going to get a chance to tell them that. You know what I mean? So if what you want is to be an actor, just act in that thing. Find somebody that you trust that is a friend to direct it. If what you really want is to be a director, and you just kind of also want to act, but you really want to be a director more, than just direct it. And you know, give yourself a little role in it, you know, somewhere that you can just like really wow, you know, write yourself a juicy role, but don't take the lead. So yeah, I mean, writing is not as big of a deal because writing at least happens and then it's kind of done. You know, not to say there aren't changes on the day, not to say there weren't times on the day that Will would say, hey, come here and let's look at the script and what do you think, can we do something here? And we would do little rewrites, of course, but that's not bad. So like, yeah, writing you can do with any of them. I wouldn't recommend directing and acting going together. Producing, you might just have to do no matter what, but it does make the other ones, you will be worse than the others. Producing is such a stressful job. If you produce, you will be a worse actor. You will be a worse director just because producing is so stressful. So if you can avoid producing, do it. But if it's your first feature, you may not be able to avoid it because somebody's got to.
So I think I have some questions just about the cast, because I love the cast in this film. Everyone seemed to be kind of perfect for their roles. You know, you mentioned that you and Scotty, who was
Matthew,
Matthew were college friends. I mean, I guess, how did you meet? You know, your chemistry was on the screen was perfect, so I imagine that's just from knowing each other for so long. But how did you all meet? And you know, I like that he is like his character because he was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, he used to be like his character. Now he's a dad. And he's the most boring guy I know. He used to be a wild dude. Like, you know, in the movie, there's a scene where we're driving the car and he like pokes his head out and looks around, and then he climbs up on the car and sits on the car while it's driving down this like country road and puts his arms out. Nobody told him to do that. We didn't even know he was gonna do that. I was just driving, and next thing I look over and it's like, oh, like that'll be a cool shot. Like, I hope I don't hit anything. Like, this is great, you know. I mean, he's just a wild dude. Or he used to be. Now he's literally the most boring guy in the world. He's a dad. But yeah, we met in college doing theater together. We were both in a acting class together and doing theater and did some plays together. And just, it just became like easy. You know, people just cast us and stuff together because we could just sort of bring some amount of something to it. So we just did, you know, I mean, probably 24 short films and web series episodes and just everything. And it was just kind of like, it also like, you know, at that age, I think everybody's just kind of like, they don't know a lot of actors. So it's like, if they knew one of the two of us, they'd be like, yeah, you do it. And you've got, you know, Matthew, right? You know, I mean, it just became easy for people. So yeah, we just did a bajillion things together. I lived with that guy for years. I mean, we were roommates for years. I'd studied abroad at one point in London for a semester. And when I came back home, I was totally broke. I had no business doing that. I didn't have money to do it in the first place and just did it anyways. And I came back and I was just broker than broke. And I couldn't afford an apartment. And so I was like, hey man, do you need a roommate? I don't really have any money. And he's like, yeah, I guess I could take a roommate. And then I get there and it's a studio apartment. There's no other rooms. It's literally like the kitchen and the bedroom. Like, Matthew, what the hell? Like, as soon as like, what? I'm too desperate. And it was like too late. So like, I literally slept in that dude's closet for like 6 weeks. It was a big closet in all fairness, but yeah, I literally slept in that dude's closet for 6 weeks. So me and Matthew, you know, we go way back. So yeah, any chemistry you're seeing was hard earned because it's also like, you know, it's not always like dude. Me and Matthew on the set of Easy Does It, every time I read a review and they're like, and their chemistry is wonderful. You can tell these guys really like each other. It cracks me up because like during shooting, we were at each other's throats. Like we're just like brothers, you know, and brothers just quibble. And then when you're stressed on top of that, just everything's like more intense. So we were just like, you know, quibbling all the time. It was just nothing over stupid stuff. But you know, he's also one of my dearest friends. It's not like we hated each other. We loved each other. It's just, you know, it's like a brother thing, you know. But yeah, and then Corey also, who plays the hostage, had been a buddy for a long time. We had done improv in college. We'd been in the improv group, and he had also been somebody we just kind of been bringing into. He's a math teacher. He's not even an actor, although I think now he should do more acting because he's fantastic in the movie. But you know, we just always kind of like bring him into little shorts, and he'd also done probably at least a dozen short films and web series and stuff with us just for since like 2008, you know. So like all of us have been doing, by the time we filmed the movie, all of us had been acting in short films and web series and stuff for like 9 years together.
It's interesting he's a math teacher because that kind of is the perfect character for him to, you know,
Yeah.
the perfect background for his character.
Right. Yeah.
And so it sounds like Matthews was kind of impulsive during the filming. And one of the other scenes I love with him is when he just dips his hand in the paint and just throws the paint on his face and, you know, is ready to go. Was that impromptu? Was that how, as written, a little bit of both?
No, yeah, that was as written. I think probably another actor might have, you know, done a little more, you know, you give Matthew anything to do and he's going to do it 110% with like no fear. So like, you know, no asking like, is this safe to go on skin? None of that, which I'm sure it was, but no, yeah, he did that. No problem.
And I guess the biggest star, aside from you, obviously, in the film.
The biggest star. No, you're right.
is Linda Hamilton. How did she
yeah.
get involved in this? It was such an interesting role for her.
They went to college together.
Yeah, we went to college.
She lived in the same studio apartment.
Oh man, what is
you opened up the closet that you were sleeping in, and she was right there.
Like, scoot over. And no, dude. So Linda is just like one of the coolest people. You know, there's always that thing where they're like, man, don't meet your heroes because they're almost certainly gonna not be as cool as you imagine them. And by and large, I found that to be true working in movies. You know, like you meet these people who seem really cool and not usually. Linda is like absolutely the exception of that. She's just a total badass, total sweetheart. She, so we wrote this role. Here's another little piece of advice. If you're writing an indie film and you want it to get made, and more importantly, you want people to see it, make sure you have roles that celebrities can play. You know, and in Hollywood, obviously the biggest star would be the lead role, but on an indie budget, you may not be able to afford to hire a celebrity, you know, caliber actor to play your lead role. So give them some really juicy, other kinds of roles, you know, right? So when Easy Does It, we wrote 2 different police officers that we always knew we wanted to try to get, you know, somewhat recognizable actors for. And then we had 2 sort of like there's this crime boss that called King George that Linda Hamilton ended up playing, and her daughter, Blue Eyes. So we kind of created these 4 roles that we were like, all right, you know, we're going to try to get sort of name actors in all 4 of these to some, you know, some degree of name actors, a spectrum. And originally they'd all been written as male. And then at one point we were like, oh no, all of the, because there was a really significant female character who got cut. And when she got cut, we were like, oh no, everybody in this movie is a dude. This is bad. We can't do this. Like, this is, so we then started thinking, okay, well, let's look at, you know, maybe King George could be a female. Like, why not? There's no reason that she couldn't be. So let's come up with, so we had a list of still male actors that we were pursuing where it was like, you know, Nicolas Cage and whoever else you might imagine would be in an indie movie that is also a star. And then we had a list of female actresses that we also thought would be cool. And at the top of it, I remember this, Will gave me this list of his wish list. And, you know, you go big. You start with your, you know, you will never get this person in a million years, but they're at the top of my list, star, and you work down to like, hey, this person was on some TV, maybe they'd be okay. And at the top of his wish list on the female list was Linda Hamilton. And I remember being like, oh yeah, that would be cool. And then just kind of filed it away and, you know, looked at numbers 10 through 20 because those are the people I thought I could get. And so, you know, we've been trying to package people and it's not going super well for that role. We got a couple of guys that were great for the 2 police officers that are, you know, they're smaller names, but also have big followings. They're terrifically talented, awesome dudes. But for King George, it was a real struggle. We knew that was sort of the juiciest, most fun role. It's the kind of thing where, you know, they appear all throughout the film, but you can shoot your stuff out really quickly. So, you know, if you get somebody big, you can still maybe afford them. And we had actually started, I mean, you know, like you have all these deadlines when you're making a feature of like, okay, and like we have to have all the cast locked down 6 weeks before production begins, yada, yada. And we locked down all of the cast except for King George. And my job as a producer was to make sure that this thing could get sold. That was just kind of that was just my mentality is like, because I'd seen so many other filmmakers that were in my community that I thought were really talented, that had made really good films that just nobody ever saw. They never got distribution, or if they got distribution, it just didn't get any publicity. Just nobody ever heard about it. Nobody ever saw it, didn't get reviewed, anything. And that was just such a heartbreaker to me because I knew how hard they'd worked and I knew how hard we had worked. And I was like, I can't face that future. Like that just isn't going to work for me. Like, this has just been too hard. I've lost too many girlfriends over this thing. Like, I can't do that. Like this, you know what I mean? Like, I got to make this thing something that people will watch. And so, you know, I really knew I needed a good name for King George. And so, you know, the 6-week deadline blew by, the 4-week deadline blew by, the 2-week deadline blew by. And they're like, hey, Ben, you know, we should probably just cast somebody. Like, you should probably just cast anybody at this point. Like, I don't think you're going to get a name actor for this. I don't think you're going to get a star. Like, we need to move on this. And I'm just like, no, just give me some time. Production begins. We're like a week in, we're 2 weeks in, we're constantly rearranging the schedule. I'm just like, no, just bump her back. Just bump her back a few weeks. They're like, okay, but you know, we need to shoot her when this actor's in town. So, I mean, or, you know, we didn't know it was her at that point. It's like, we need to shoot King George when this actor's in town. So we can't bump it more of this. And, you know, and eventually like I'm getting into screening matches. Like I remember, I won't say who it was, but somebody very high up in the production who like, you know, somebody who I would say has a little bit of power over, you know, more say than me, called me on the phone. And I was walking into like an AMC Cineplex to go see some, you know, movie because I go to the movies twice a week like a psychopath. And I was like walking in, I was just about to like take my seat and I get this call. I'm like, oh, I should take it. So I bop out. And I got into just like this screaming match in the hallway of one of these like Cineplexes of just like, we will, you know, like you will, they were just like, Ben, I'm sorry, but like we're halfway through production. We have to cast somebody. We can't keep this going. Like this isn't gonna work.
Very reasonable statements.
Yeah, very reasonable. Like they were being very reasonable. And I just like hulked out in them. Just no, like I will walk, like you will see, you know, just like lost my shit, you know. And then sure enough, man, we were doing we had taken like a little hiatus from, or maybe this is like right before filming, I don't remember, but at some point, like right around this time, I had been doing my day job, which is my day job is like for TV shows and movies, they need electronic press kits, EPK, and so it's like interviews and behind the scenes. And so like I produce those units, which is a wonderfully easy job. You literally just talk to networks, see what it is they want, like what's the angle they want to promote. And then you hire a very, very small crew, a very small amount of equipment. You go out, you shoot some interviews, they even send you the questions. Amazingly easy work, which is good. If you want to be an independent filmmaker, find an easy day job that doesn't spend, because it's like you don't have to show up on set every day. So I might only do like 10 days a season. I might only do 3 shows a year. So it's only like 30 days a year I'm actually doing my day job. But it's like cushy money. So I can spend the rest of my year making 10 cents an hour doing indie films. Anyway, so I'm on my day job. I'm doing this show called Claws. It's on TNT. And they're shooting, and I get back to the studio from doing, an interview or something. And somebody's like, hey, you're never going to guess who just came into the studio walking her dog, Linda Hamilton. Apparently she lives just a few blocks away. And so immediately I get on my phone, I'm like, Will, you're not going to believe this, but like Linda Hamilton like lives near New Orleans. Like she lives in New Orleans. Like, what are the chances? And we were just like, that's like, this is meant to be. Like, we just like, we're like sure that this is going to happen. And so, we go, I do recommend, like, even if you've got a connection to an actor, unless it's like really somebody well, you've worked with them before, I would recommend trying to go through the proper channels, because it's, you just look more professional, A, and then B, you don't want to make it really uncomfortable if they have to say no. So we did go through her agent, but then we were able to kind of get word to her through the community, through somebody who knew somebody, because New Orleans is very small, of like, hey, these guys they're good guys. Like, this project's legit. Like, it won't be embarrassingly bad, because that's all they really want to know is like, will it be embarrassingly bad?
Yeah.
But she read the script, she saw the trailer, or we had sent her that. We didn't know she'd seen it yet. And here's how it went down. We sent it to her. Like, I've literally gotten all the extensions I can possibly get. I'm at the point where there's like screaming matches happening. So like, I can't push it any further. This is it. And we sent it to her, and we haven't heard anything back. And so like maybe a few days, maybe a week goes by, and I'm like, okay, let's double the offer. And we did not have that amount doubled. Like, that was not money that existed. It was a total bluff, which I don't recommend you do, because what if
especially with your big name.
Yeah, total bluff. So don't do this part of what we did. But we had offered her, so I'll go and tell you. So we'd offered her $5,000 for her role, which is, penny. She makes $5,000 just eating lunch on Terminator. You know what I mean? So she, it was like not a good offer, but whatever is what we had. So we doubled it to $10,000, which was not money we had, because we were just like, oh my God, we need her. And she gets back to us after that to say, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't get back to you because I hadn't gotten back to you, not because the offer is too low, but because I'm negotiating this other project, which turned out to be Terminator Dark Fate. We didn't know that at the time. But she's like, I'm in negotiation on another project, so I hadn't had a chance to look at your project. But I read the script, and I saw the concept trailer, and I want to do it, but I'm not going to do it for $10,000. I'll do it for $5,000. And
wow.
I know.
Wow.
What a cool lady, dude. What a cool lady.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then she got to set, did it, saw like what we were working with, you know what I mean? It was like an indie-ass movie. And months later, like, the money was being released from escrow to her, and she's like, you know what? I don't need this money. Take it back. And she gave us back. We had to take out a little bit for SAG and a little bit for her agent's commission and all that. But then she just like donated back. They just basically gave the money back for the majority of her $5,000, as much as she could give back. She just gave it back because she knew that we needed it to promote the movie. She knew we needed it to, that we were just, it was always a hustle. So she ended up doing it for basically nothing.
Wow. I got to say, at least this week of last year, I met Linda Hamilton at San Diego Comic-Con for Terminator Dark Fate press room. Being her presence alone is just magical. But I 100% believe this story to the T, because she's just so passionate and so kind. And while, all the major outlets are there, like, entertainment and so forth, Arnold had to skip out because I think he sprained his ankle or something. But
no, I don't believe he would do that.
He didn't make it. He did not make it to the room, but she took time to speak to every single person in there. And, as much as how that film came about and how, there was a lot of reserve into actually doing the film and how passionate she was to being a part of that. She's just a really, really special, legendary icon. And again, being in her presence is just magical. So that's so fitting to hear that story. Cause she literally does have one of the biggest hearts of anybody I've ever just been around and got to speak to. So that's so awesome. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I also love that you were trying to change the fate of your movie and the future of your movie through Linda Hamilton, because that just seems very fitting, for her roles. So I guess this answers my next question, but I guess I'll ask it anyways. When I was seeing the scenes with Blue, it kind of felt like a Terminator-esque, a Terminator-inspired character. So I was wondering if she was written after you secured Linda Hamilton, but I guess not. I guess she was just always, viewed as a badass.
That's so interesting, dude. I never noticed the Terminator parallel. That's really an interesting thing that you drew out of it. No, I mean, she was also written as a male originally. She was supposed to be, that was the role that we were like, oh yeah, we're gonna get Nick Cage, totally, like that was the role that we wanted Blue. Yeah, we wanted him to be this kind of like old, like King George is gonna be even older, and Blue Eyes is gonna be this sort of like, like squinting, like, whatever, I don't know, something like, Nick Cage type of thing. And I think that we first flipped the gender. Yeah, we must have first flipped the gender on Blue Eyes because we didn't get Linda until last minute. So we were like, okay, well, it's her daughter. And because it was that thing where we like looked up, we cut a major female character because the whole sequence got cut. It was just a massive rewrite. And we looked up and we're like, oh no, there's no female characters. Like, this ain't right. So
which good on you for recognizing that. Like that's an important thing to realize partway through your movie, that you kind of have to pivot just to make sure that it seems, more open and more genuine.
Yeah, well, thanks. I mean, man, I mean, people, making sure that you are being as sensitive as you need to be and being as, and representing folks that are different than you are is something that I think I learned a lot about doing this film, just because you just don't think. It's just pure naivety. It's just pure ignorance. There's definitely decisions that were made in the film that now through the spectrum of time, we would have done differently just because we're not as ignorant or naive as we were then. But, yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's an ongoing thing that I think every filmmaker has to examine. You can't just, if you just write just kind of without kind of double checking yourself, it's easy to just write characters for a bunch of people that look like you, and there's no malice. It's not like you're doing it because you don't think that females make good characters or whatever. It's just kind of, I guess, maybe how a lot of people are wired, is that's just sort of like the natural impulse. And so yeah, I mean, I wish that I could say that those were just from conception, like things that we had in mind, and unfortunately that's not the case. I mean, yeah, I think it's important for everybody who is a creator to sort of like really try to double check your work, like go back and check your work and make sure that you're representing. But anyways, thank you for saying that. Yeah, so we had this actress, Susan Gordon, that we had also gone to college with. And she was just phenomenally talented. And I mean, if you meet her, she's like the exact opposite of Blue Eyes in every way. I mean, she's not a murderer, so that's good. She's yeah, but I mean, she's this like bubbly, goofy, funny person. She's like a real clown. And she's got this great pilot, this comedy pilot, Sweet Feenies, that she's producing right now. And she writes comedy. She's a very light person, but she's also a very method, intense actress. And I mean, this is the type of person who, she would go off and rehearse, and that meant she would go to a park where she could just be in character and scream at the dirt for like an hour with a baseball bat. And so at one point she had the cops called on her, and they showed up with like guns drawn because she was just like an insane person in like rural Louisiana, just screaming at the dirt and like, carrying her baseball bat around. Like this is this type of person who's like that level of dedicated actor. So no, I mean, she and Will really took, I mean, to be honest, the character we created for Blue Eyes was a bit two-dimensional. It was just kind of like, well, we need a bad guy who has a bat. Like it was, to be honest, like, when the script that we sent Susan, I really don't know that she had that much dimension. And then she and Will worked together to make this really odd, distinctive character. So yeah, a lot of credit is due to her for that.
And was it that collaboration that got the like radio announcer aspect of her character, where her actions are kind of like mirrored in what's happening on the radio?
So I think that was in the script. I think we definitely upped that amount. So that's John Goodman who is playing that radio announcer. So there was always a little bit of radio announcing. Like Will really liked the idea that in parallel to all of this going on, that, yeah, you would have this radio announcer who's sort of, giving you a little bit of like a Greek chorus style exposition of things that are happening. And so that was already there in the script. I think that we definitely boosted it once we knew it was going to we were going to have John Goodman doing it because we were so excited. We're huge fans of his. But yeah, I think there was some version of that in the script. I think so.
Okay, so one more question about your college roommates.
yeah.
Dwight Henry is another name notably in this cast. How did that come about?
I love Dwight. He's such a cool dude. So Dwight, viewers may remember him from Beast of the Southern Wild. He's like the co-lead. It's about the little girl, but her dad is all throughout it. He plays her dad. This dude, I mean, he's such a just like down to earth guy. Like, I learned so much about the industry just by sitting down for drinks one night with him when we were casting him. We like met up a couple times just to talk about the project, talk about the role. And, we kind of asked him, we're like, so Beast of Southern Wild was nominated for, I think 3 or 4 Oscars. And so he had to do the Oscar campaign. Mm-hmm. And he's just not a Hollywood dude at all. He's like from New Orleans, born and bred. And he's, done movies, but he's never moved out of New Orleans. And he's just somebody who is really easy to relate to because he's kind of from the same place I am. So, it's a lot easier for us to relate than it might be for some actor coming from Hollywood. And I mean, dude, just hearing this guy talk about like what hell it is to like go through like a Hollywood press circuit when you got like a movie at the Oscars, I mean, you just never heard somebody who just tells it so real. But he has a real passion for indie film and for all of that, And so we knew that he still lived in New Orleans. He owned a bakery down here at the time. He might have opened up a new one. We kind of knew the Beast of the Southern Wild guys a little bit. They're a few years older than us, a little bit ahead of us, but we had, talked to some of them for advice, early on in the film, and they'd all said he was just lovely to work with. And so we just asked him out to drinks, and just said, hey, we got this indie project. What do you think? And he was just game. He was just, because the thing is, actors want to act. If you're an actor, if that's what your passion is and you're not doing it, then you miss it. You want to do it. And I mean, he was the first guy on, so he was there before Bryan Batt was, before Linda was, before anything. I mean, we really didn't have much to show for ourselves. He took a huge risk because we could have been just some really bad, really embarrassingly bad indie. He had no idea, because there was nothing else on it. He just took a leap of faith. He was just like, look, you seem like good New Orleans guys. You seem like good guys. And, I like acting and, so yeah, of all the people on the film that are named actors, he's the one who just took the biggest leap of faith just to support an indie film. So man, Dwight's always, and he's around. If anybody's got an indie film and they got a role that, would be a good role for Dwight, hit that man up because he should be working more than he is. He's lovely to work with, just the chillest, most laid back guy. And I think partially just because he chooses to live in New Orleans and not Los Angeles, he just doesn't get as many calls as he should for how good of an actor he is. So if any of you guys have an indie film, hit up Dwight Henry.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it got the Marvin Gaye film that's coming out soon.
I know,
whatever soon is, but yeah, eventually.
Eventually, yeah.
Right.
So I just have a couple more questions about the movie and some of the filming. I guess we can't go through an interview about this movie without talking about the car. Where'd you get it? Can I borrow it for the weekend? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, so we thought that we could just rent a car. We thought that would be the cheapest thing, like from like a movie car company. We were like, yeah, that'll be cheaper, right? We'll just rent one from a movie car company. And we kept getting quotes and like, downing like, oh, this would be the perfect car. Like, oh, we can't afford that. How much would this be for this many days? How much would this be? And it just became quickly clear, working in a city like New Orleans where there's a film industry presence is great in a lot of ways because there's a lot of trained crew and trained actors and equipment. But then some things are just more expensive, like renting a movie car. They're used to like big budgets and we just couldn't afford, and it was getting pretty dire. So then we started turning to Craigslist and looking for people who were, had cars. Like we'd go to car shows and find people who had cars we liked, be like, hey, can we just rent your car for a few days just to shoot this movie? And they're all just like, what are you talking about? No, like, of course not. Like, this is my beautiful, 60 something, whatever. Like, no, I'm not going to trust you kids to like, no. So we were just like striking out majorly and we were really screwed. And so it was like, I want to say we were like 10 days out for shooting and the car works almost every day. Like the car isn't as much of the movie as I am, so like day one car, day two car, day three car, like, you know, like every day had the car. We're like 10 days out, we still don't have a car. And we go to Lizzie, who was like, you know, really the producer steering the ship during production. We're like, Lizzie, I think we have to buy a car. And she was like, what the, like, no, like, absolutely not. Like, what are you guys talking about? And we were just like, look, I don't think we're going to get it otherwise. We need a car. We should buy the car. And so we thankfully, you know, living in New Orleans, we've got a lot of kind of rural places around us. And generally you'll find that it's cheaper to buy a car in a rural setting because there's less demand. So we found this car in McKiln, Mississippi, which is on the coast and kind of like a small community. And, you know, it was really a steal. I mean, we bought that Mustang. It was a 65 Mustang, which is the 64 and a half to the 66 or 67 Mustang are kind of the most prized window because they're the very first ones. They're really beautiful cars. And she let it go for like $7,800 or something just because it was hard to sell in that community. There's not a lot of wealth in that community. And so she was just trying to let it go because she wanted to build her next thing. And so it was just the perfect, like, right place, right time. And so we got it. I mean, had barely just enough time to get it, you know, do a couple of things that it needed in terms of repairs, you know, new battery, like kind of stuff, you know, get the paint job done. And just in time to be able to use it on day one of shooting. And it was one of my favorite things about shooting that movie because we were on a limited budget. On a real movie, you would, on a thing that precious, you know, it's in every scene of the movie, you would have it on a trailer at all times to set, you know, it gets on set, then you take it off the trailer, you shoot with it, you put it back on the trailer to take it back to its garage or wherever you're keeping it. But we didn't have that kind of money. So I drove it to set almost every day other than, you know, we went to West Texas for a shoot. Like, obviously we trailered it out there. And there was a few different days where it was just, you know, too far on the interstate, you know, over 3 hours and we would get a trailer. But other than that, I drove to set every day, you know, sometimes as much as a couple of hours. And that was a thrill, dude. That was so much fun. You know, we did all our own driving in the movie, no stunt drivers or anything. And it was lovely, dude. I mean, I don't know what to tell. It was great. If you guys you know, have any 65 Ford Mustangs you're looking at to buy and you're on the fence, do it. It's great.
That's a good perk of the job, right? Making the film so you can get classic cars and look awesome.
Yeah.
You also can say was also shown in this movie and driven by Linda Hamilton. The value is already doubled.
There you go.
Right. Yeah.
Investment.
So you're mentioning the filming. You know, I know it probably started in New Orleans. Did you film all the way across the country, or was there some limited set of the country that you visited?
Yeah, so we shot, I would say, you know, 85% of the film kind of within a 4-hour radius of New Orleans. So New Orleans, rural Louisiana, rural Mississippi. And, you know, Mississippi had some really great back roads and stuff. And rural Louisiana had some great back roads as well. And there's an amazing amount of stuff just in and around New Orleans if you kind of just look at it with a different lens. And then we shot about 15% of it in West Texas. You know, we took a very small crew. There's probably like, you know, 10 or maybe 12 of us, including actors, you know, small crew. Took a road trip out to Texas, where this is the very last stuff we shot. So we had straight up ran out of money at this point. So we were camping, couldn't afford a hotel. We were like, just like, you know, brought tents and we just like shoot like these. It was really long days because we only had a few days there. So we'd shoot these like brutal 14-hour days in like the scorching like West Texas sun, and then just like crawl into our, you know, like, and like nothing but it was like in the middle of nowhere, West Texas. So Alpine, Fort Davis, Marfa, kind of north of the Big Bend area, really rural, beautiful, but really rural. So like no restaurants or anything would be open by the time we wrapped shooting, and we didn't have a caterer. We didn't have anybody there to like buy groceries and make it. We didn't have anywhere to make it. We were in a campground. So just like every day we would just either go by like a gas station or like McDonald's. Those are the only things open. Get our like really pitiful, horrible dinner and just like go lay in our like, you know, tents and just like eat our horrible, like, you know, gas station burrito. Really, it sounds miserable. It's actually the most fun part of shooting. But yeah, man. So we did a few days out in West Texas, and it's a beautiful area because it's at the foot of the Davis Mountains, so you can get some mountainous stuff. But there's also a lot of like plains, really straight stretches there. There's also the White Sands Deserts right around there. So we were able to get sort of, you know, New Mexico, Utah, Arizona, California border. I guess it wouldn't be Utah, but New Mexico, Arizona, California border, and Texas, all of Texas, sort of all the looks that we needed sort of within, an hour and a half drive of one another. And yeah, it was lovely out there. A lot of the stuff that you see in the film that looks like it was shot, especially in the more mountainous areas, is all VFX. We had an amazing team of VFX artists who just really wanted a credit to build their career. So they were doing it for like, just pennies. I mean, just like these are friends of ours and friends of friends who just wanted a chance to, because when you start off in VFX, like a lot of things, you start at the very bottom. So you're doing like cleanup work and go between work. And it's hard to like really put forth a portfolio after doing that. So these were guys who were like, no, like I want to be the one who does that shot entirely by myself. And so just as like a resume builder, and because they were just cool dudes, they were doing, so I mean, the movie has like hundreds of VFX shots, which is really not something that it should have on its budget. I mean, we really shouldn't have been able to afford to do any VFX, but they were just really cool about it. And so a lot of the stuff that you see is we'd shoot it in a real place, and then they would just do a sky replacement where they would take out the pine trees and put in mountains or something in the background. If you go to our Facebook or Instagram, there's actually one VFX reel that's already been released and another that I think we're going to release probably this week or next that show you some of the before and afters of, how we were able to shoot in Louisiana and make it look like it was Arizona or whatever. So
very cool. So I've got one more question, and then we'll jump into the lightning rounds. I know this is probably particular to me because I'm from Southern California. When your character was describing the route they were going to take, you switched between take 10, take 405, but then you switched into like take the 10, take the 205. I was wondering, you're from Louisiana as well, from Southern California. It's a very Southern California thing, so I just wasn't sure.
Oh, interesting, because y'all say take the 10.
Yeah, like take the 10 to the 405 to.
Huh, that's interesting. No, Will's from Illinois, so I don't think any of us are from Southern California. That's funny. What would I say? I think in Louisiana we'd say take the 10. Yeah, we'll take the 10 up to so and so, and then interesting. I didn't know that was like a California thing.
Yeah, it's a Southern California thing. At least that's what I learned growing up. So maybe I'm just biased, but
interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
All right, so we have the next little set is something we like to do called the lightning round. You as the writer and star, you probably put a lot into this character, but we try to ask questions about the movie, about the things that the characters do, to see how close you are to the character, to see what things you've done that the characters did, and vice versa. And you can answer as much or as little as you want. We try to make the questions somewhat tame.
Okay, cool. Let's do it.
So, have you ever ran from someone you owed something to?
I'm sure my big sister, when I was a kid, had something coming her way that I almost certainly, I was a scamp. So almost certainly my big sister was owed some toy or something. Yes, almost certainly. Let's say yes.
Okay. Have you ever shot fireworks at a friend?
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. That was the point of fireworks when I was a kid. I know things are different now because we all whatever, but yeah, man, when I was a kid, bottle rockets, you would hold it for as long as you could to aim it, and then you open your hand at the last second when it takes off, and you just whoosh, and it will go right at the person. And then it's great because you see it coming, and as long as it's not on you when it pops, you're fine. It can even hit you and bounce off, but if it pops on you, you're screwed. And then Roman candles, even better, because then you're playing this waiting game. You're like, okay, is that a 5-shot or a 10-shot? And when do I light mine? And yeah, man, we would do Harry Potter duels, where we would just do 10 paces and just turn them on each other. I mean, absolutely. I don't have any scars. I have friends that have scars to this day from me nailing them with Roman candles.
I'm glad they're still friends too.
Right.
So I guess follow-up, have you ever shot fireworks at an enemy?
No, I guess not. No, I guess not. But that's a good goal.
Well, I'm glad that they stayed friends too, so that's good to hear.
Have you ever thrown a fight or a competition?
Huh.
Or shall I say point shave?
I don't think So I'm pretty competitive. So if I'm in it, I'm in it. No, that's not true. We've all done it. You do it for girlfriends and stuff, you know, because she's getting mad. And that's not to say that women aren't good at like, you know, foosball.
It's to avoid an argument.
Women are just as good, but I'm just saying, yeah, to avoid an argument. If I was, you know, if it was guys who do the same thing, yeah, I think, yes, absolutely. I have thrown a game of foosball or two because I was winning too much and it was about to get ugly. So yes, I have.
Perfect. So other than this movie, obviously, have you ever gone on a road trip?
Yeah, so I had taken a California road trip that was pretty much the exact route we take in the movie. About a year, we'd already written a draft, and it just so happened that some friends were like, "Hey, you want to do it?" So I did it. And it was a great trip. I don't know if you guys have ever. So you say you're from Southern California. Have you ever done the inverse and gone east, kind of along the south from SoCal?
Not along the south. The farthest east I went was I took a road trip to Colorado. That was like a 14-hour road trip. Not a ton, but it was long.
Which is still pretty. I mean, dude, it's a great road trip because, I mean, we don't go into this in the movie, of course, but I mean, like, you pass by the Grand Canyon, you pass by the Hoover Dam, you can pass by Carlsbad Caverns really easily. It's a dope trip. I mean, Texas, no shade on Texas, but Texas is boring. Let's just be real. That's like the worst way to drive across it too, because it's like this, and you're just driving across the longest part. And like, you know, it's like at first it's like, oh, cool, like Dallas, like okay, let's get some good food. And like, oh, Austin, like we're gonna go a little ways out of the way and go to Austin, great. And then, man, you just got like the worst day of your life ahead of you because it's just there's nothing there, you know. And you're just like really like, you know, Texas cops kind of freak you out. So the whole time you're just like, okay, nobody speed. Like it's. Other than Texas, and then West Texas is cool. West Texas is funky. They're just doing their own thing in West Texas. So like parts of I'm not going to hate on all of Texas. Austin's great. West Texas is funky and cool. But other than Texas, that's a great trip. I highly recommend it.
I think Texas has the longest perfectly straight stretch of road in the country. I think where you could literally just, if your car doesn't oversteer or understeer, you could just sit there with it and be fine for hours.
Put on a movie. Yeah, Jesus, it's so boring.
Put on this movie.
Put on this. That's, oh no, people are going to die.
So on that road trip, I guess, how many states did you go to? It sounds like maybe you went to 5 or so.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think it would have been about 5 or so. I think, and I've done a couple other, I'm a big travel guy, so I think I've done a couple other road trips, but I think 5 is the most states I've ever done.
Have you ever dug for treasure, whether using a metal detector at the beach or pan for gold, anything of that sort?
Man, I haven't, and now I'm ashamed that I'm going to. The next time I'm on this podcast, I'll have a different answer.
Improvise second question. Will you plan on sharing this metal and treasure that you find?
I feel like I have to, because I mean, you had the idea, so at least with the, I feel like I have to now.
It's on video, so there we go.
Yeah.
Have you ever slid across the roof of a car?
No, I've tried, and it's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, indeed.
I feel like it just ruins the car, but it looks really cool. So
definitely about to say, teach me your way. It does not go good if it doesn't execute. It is not good.
No, dude, it's a bad look. So no, never successfully.
Oh boy. One of my biggest fears. Have you ever ran out of gas?
I have, dude. I have. One time, no, I'm not going into the story, but I've run out of gas in some inopportune times, yes. It's the worst. It's like, and you feel like such an idiot. Like, how did there's even a meter right here telling me.
And you're like, I could have filled up 5 miles that way, but I didn't. Yeah.
Wait.
So, you know, one of my favorite scenes is the, I guess call it the dashboard full of food, the car dashboard full of food. So have you ever done that on your road trip?
I've never eaten a dashboard full of food. No, dude, that day was rough to film, man, because look, we all love some good greasy fast food. You know, I'm about it, but dude, just so many takes. And it was like, it was like cold by the time we got to it. So I don't recommend it. Don't do it. It's not great.
And finally, what's your go-to road trip meal?
That's a great question, man. Man, that's a good question. All right. So if you happen to be in I think they're only in Mississippi, and I don't know what road trip you took. I'm from Mississippi, so I can say this, but I can't imagine why your road trip would take you to Mississippi because there's not much there to see. Not trying to hit, I'm not trying to hit on my home state, but let's just be real. There's
Trying to
not
get your
much there.
1965 Mustang.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. So on your road trip to buy your new '65 Mustang that you're getting, there's a small chain. It's only in Mississippi, as far as I know, called Wards, 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 and it's just this greasy spoon fast food place that like specializes in chili burgers and chili dogs. And the chili burger is called the Big One, and they have a little one called a Little One. But it is, and they make their own root beer. And man, when I tell you, this is the best fast food you will ever have. Oh, except while you're also in Mississippi, go into Waynesboro, Mississippi, which is like middle of nowhere. Like you're going to have to make a serious detour. No, I don't care where you're going. This is going to be a detour. This is on the way to nowhere. But Wards you'll find throughout the state, and get the Big One and get the chili cheese dog and get the root beer. Trust me. And the hot dog is the wrong color. It's like bright red. It doesn't make sense, but it's good. It's really good. And then when you go to Waynesboro, and you go to Cooley Burger, which is in an alley. You go down an alley in like this like old decrepit downtown where like all the businesses are shuttered because like, like that downtowns are dying in cities. And you go in this like old decrepit downtown where like all the businesses are out of business, and you go down this alley, and in this just like, how like, in the back of like in the middle of an alley, there's like this opening where like all of like the businesses like have their dumpsters, and like really shouldn't be any businesses there. It's just basically like a parking lot. But these guys are like, this is a perfect place for our hamburger stand. And they have this hamburger stand. It's just like a little shack. It's like the building is like maybe this big. I don't know how people go inside of it. It's some Harry Potter stuff. It's like tiny. And it's just this little shack, and you can smell it. And you see people coming out with these sacks. They're like brown paper sacks that are just like see-through from all the grease. It's called Cooley Burger. And this is the best burger I've ever had in my entire life. And yeah, so I mean, if this road trip takes you anywhere other than Mississippi, I guess I got no advice for you. But if you go to Mississippi, then I got the reps. You got to try those.
There we go. That's some good advice for your future road trip.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that's everything for me. Nazir, do you have any other questions or?
No, I'll do it.
All right. Well, thank you, Ben, for joining us. This is Mr. Ben Matheny, the writer and star of Easy Does It, and also the professor in the upcoming New Orleans University film class on independent filmmaking. It blends art and business, as we've learned. His film Easy Does It it's just a fantastic. Oh, actually, one more question. I'm sorry. I read somewhere that you filmed this on actual film. Was that true, and how difficult was that?
Untrue. We never wrote that. One festival saw the movie and put that in their festival write-up because we did a bunch of work with our terrific colorist Kyoto Color in New Orleans to give the digital footage a film look. We spent a lot of time working with him on the film grain, so we really wanted to look like that. I think maybe about like less than 5% of the film was shot on film. There was a little bit shot on either 8 or 16 millimeter. For all of the San Clemente flashbacks, when Jack is thinking about his like memories from being a child of San Clemente, the city that they're going to, that the gold is in, stuff with his mother who was alive at the time. All that stuff was on 8 or 16 millimeter. I think 8 millimeter, but it would have been Super 8 because it's color, so maybe 16. I don't know. Anyways, the rest of it, no. We weren't the perpetrators of this lie. This was just a lie that got perpetrated on our behalf. It was all shot with digital format cameras, and then we used digital film grains to give it that look. I would say if you were doing your first feature, unless you have a tremendous amount of financial support and a really large budget, I think you really should consider not shooting on film. It's obviously beautiful, but it can add up really fast. I wouldn't. We wanted to. That was the original goal, and it just became quickly clear that the film would not have gotten done if we had, early on in the process, our producer Lizzie was just like, "This isn't going to work. I'm looking at the numbers. This is a bad idea." But had we persisted and done it anyways, the film would not have gotten finished because it's just then you have to do reshoots. It's it just so no. But But yeah, thank you guys, David and Jared. Thank you both for having me on. This is a thrill. I checked out an episode of your podcast. I love it. I can't wait to listen to more. Yeah, as you said, we're available for rental or purchase anywhere that you get your stuff: iTunes, Amazon, YouTube, wherever you rent or purchase, or on cable, satellite. Any of those. We got some really cool stuff coming on our Facebook and Instagram. We got some really great Linda Hamilton interviews that are going to be dropping into this week, beginning of next, and some other cool stuff. So please give us a follow. And yeah, what about you guys? Are you guys filmmakers? You got any projects coming up?
No, it's one of those. You know, I love movies, but not a filmmaker. This is just a fun hobby.
Yeah, we got a ton of films to review. For sure.
Yeah.
But no, we're doing our end on the spectrum. You all are doing the hard work, and it's a hard time. So we're just trying to get the word out to our audience about these films that may go overlooked, but should definitely be checked out. And with everybody where they should be at home, quarantining, and with everything being at your fingertips, we just want to make sure we get the narrative out there that there's a ton of good films out, even though they're not in your movie theaters right now.
I think that Ratatouille line where he talks about how critics' job is easy. They take people's hard work and just kind of like watch it and come to a quick conclusion is very true. But it's this was one of those films that you kind of watch and you just can't help but stop. Leave with a smile on your face, and so this is a real pleasure to watch. So
well, thank you, man. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for making it, and as always, go to www.watchyourpass.com for all your movie news, reviews, interviews, deals, and recommendations. And thank you so much.